Thank you. Now, in the notices that I sent, this is supposed to be a discussion concert. Okay, so it's not just, we're not here only to play music. You know, we're also supposed to discuss a few things. You know, like we have a WhatsApp group, for instance, which is the Joy of Music group, and from time to time, all sorts of discussions come on, you know, on the group, and then of course all sorts of arguments, interesting, you know, discussions. So when we have a topic here, we have something here. I don't want to call it a topic. I don't want to make it too formal, too academic. Just an issue, you know, that we might, touch on a little bit. Basically, the issue is the standardization of our music. Okay. Establishing standards for our music. About 2 weeks ago or sometime, we had a discussion, which basically started from someone asking, what led to that, to the discussion was that someone asked that, does Islam have a classical music genre? or is it just that, well, basically, I don't want to go too deep into the, but basically the person asks, that does Islam, just like, Christianity, when a lot of times classical music somewhat, is associated with Christianity, classical music, in Europe, is somewhat, it's not totally true. It's not like classical music is Christian music, but there's some kind of affiliation. So the person asks that, does Islam have, a parallel sort of, classical music? Okay, and then of course, people contributed. First of all, we mentioned that in Islam, music is haram, which is forbidden. That is in traditional Islam. Basically forbids, music. And there are all sorts of things generated, things, people discuss all sorts of things. Now basically, at the end of the day, sometime, somewhere along the line, the discussion, veered into the question that, why is it that it looks as if our standards of making music, that is reading music for instance, the music that we read, and the music that we make, the music that we write, we use the standards of the European standard, when we write our parts, for instance, 4-part harmony, it's the European standard. When we compose a lot of our piano pieces, it's the European standard. Why couldn't we establish our own standards, our own African Nigerian standards, and use it? Why must we allow, allow the Europeans to lord it over us? So, well, we thought, okay, look, let us bring this topic for discussion here. We don't want to spend too much time on the discussion, but basically, I'll just read what I wrote down here. What I wrote down here is standardizing our music, the process and the problem of homogeneity, that is unity of genres and cultures. What made me to coin this like that is that, in Europe, the Europeans had to sit down, from time to time, and it took centuries for them to sit down and look, this is the standard, this is how, if you want to write so and so type of music, these are the rules, these are the laws that you need to follow. Okay, so now we're asking ourselves, standardizing our music, what do we think of standardizing our music? Is this still possible? What are the problems that we are experiencing right now? That is making us not to be able to standardize our music like Europeans, are doing it. And at the end of the day, it's making it look as if they are loading their music over us, and we have to start to adopt their standards for writing our music and making our music. So I believe I've made a good enough introduction. So anyone who is okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, my name is Nio Mola. Very interesting. When we talk about classical, I think when I was doing my master's in Israel, I had a topic called "What is meaning in music?" And then when I went to Boston at the same time, my professor Bombrick told me, "Abraham, what is classical?" And then we tried to analyze what's the real meaning of classical. The real meaning of classical just means the songs that obey the rules. And if you have your own standard in Nigeria and it's not cut across the world, they won't be able to interpret your music. Your pianos, your PP will not mean PP to me. Your FF doesn't mean FF to me. It depends on my own interpretation. So we have different way of interpreting music, but there should be a way that is cut across the board. That when your music, when Mr. Yobankole's music goes to US now, they'll be able to understand because it has the notes written down in the language that you understand. That's why they say music is a universal language. If you have to make Nigerian music that cannot cross the border, that cannot go beyond Lagos, it will not work. So that's why we still need to continue to emphasize the reading of music. A lot of problems we have in Nigeria right now, like because there was no, and I'm sorry to say, my honorable church in Nigeria, the Redeemed Christian Church of God, I need to be honest to you, my GO is not happy with the level of music we have in the church. The problem we have is because we don't have competent people who can handle proper music in church. That's why we are taking all those trash and everything goes on. So I want to re-emphasize here that they have set the standard for us. Akiyuba, Ayobankole, and all those people that have set the standard of writing music. So there's no shortcut than to write your music. And to God be the glory, K-Stick got the best in music all over the world because he read music by playing the atmosphere. I remember that day. Sponsored by British Council long time ago when Monkey was on top of the tree. Okay, so what in a very simple way, classical music just means the song that obeys the rules. And then when it doesn't obey the rule, it becomes something else. All my professors, my mentors are here. Professor Chingwa is here, and my honorable Mr. Yobankoli is here. So that is my own way of it. So there's no shortcut. People need to learn how to write the music down, how to play the music. My young musician here, I respect him so much, Ayo, because he worked with TerraCulture and he did a lot of composition, which I cherish so much. I really, really appreciate that. It will not go to that level, he cannot write the music down. Now the player has gone to UK, am I right? Yeah, it's gone over the world. If the music is not written down, it will just be Nigeria and only Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I need to sound this note of warning. Time is running out. So we would have to enforce, you're talking next time, we're going to enforce time consciousness. At a stretch, you will not be able to talk for more than 3 minutes. So please, put your thoughts together. If by chance you get to talk again, you get another 3 minutes, but you'll not be able to talk at a stretch for more than 3 minutes. Thank you very much. Your next one.
Good afternoon. My name is Ekupola. Yeah, although this is not a formal setting, but I'll still have to recognize all the treatment. In my treatment, yes. Standardizing music, our music in Nigeria. From the introduction, Mr. Sheung said, music on us. You see, whether we believe it or whether we agree with it or not, they have the standard. They started it. They started this classical music, the standardized way of music. So we are copying them. The only way we can achieve our own standardized music is what we are doing actually right now. When you hear Mr. Sheung over this composition, without waiting for somebody to tell you that this is Sheung Owade, when you listen, you know this is the style. That's the standard. When you hear Ayo Ogunroti's composition, and you hear one thing from one chord going to one thing from this, no, you won't need a soothsayer to tell you, oh, that's Ayo Ogunroti and the likes. And all these African musicians are bringing in their own sense of harmony. I heard my brother he played this Ekiti song, introducing or bringing in the Ekiti harmony. You know, even if it's not 4 parts, it's still there. And of course, when you put that into writing, which makes it become a language now, when you put it into writing, anywhere in the world, anybody will sing it, and it's recognized. So I believe we are, one way or the other, we are standardizing our music. Thank you.
Yes, I just want to maybe shed more light and maybe probe further by maybe asking a question. Like, I thank Bingo Isaiah for trying to clarify my question. I think he is actually more in tune with my introduction. And he reiterated, in fact, the question that I asked, standardization of our music, meaning that, Africans or Nigerians establishing a standard, our own, unique standard, which is unique to us, Nigerians or Africans, which is unique to us. For instance, the music from Southeast Asia and the music of the Orients, that is China, Japan, Korea, and so on and so forth. They have their own classical music, all right? They have their classical music, okay? And they have their traditional music. So how do we standardize our own music such that, and the thing is, for instance, the music of the Orients, Chinese classical music, for instance. Of course, it's radically different from European classical music. But somehow they have been able to establish their own standards. So how do we also establish our own standards? And my question to probe further is that, is it possible at this particular time where everything has just basically scattered in terms of there's no more unity, there's no more homogeneity of, okay, this is the music of 200 years ago. Okay, when you hear French music, this is French music. You understand? And the French, even though yes, they have subdivisions as well, but the French people are French people. Italians are Italians. Okay, the Germans are Germans. English, Portuguese, Spanish. And these people, all these people, they had to sit down over centuries, sitting down to harmonize their thoughts and come out with basic sets of rules as to how to compose in their classical style. Now my question is it still possible? Now, well, I didn't live 300 years ago, but I can imagine that life was simpler then. Okay? People's thoughts were more unified, more uniform. So is it possible in these present times when even the classical music of the Europeans themselves are scattered? Over the periods, you had the Baroque period, okay, you had the Renaissance, you had the pre-Renaissance, yes, the classical, the romantic, the neo-romantic, and so on and so forth. The Impressionist. And basically, at least from what we read from the history books, is that during a particular period that has been named, under a certain name, at least the vast majority of composers composed in that style, and that is why that period is being named, that style. Now, as time goes on, we found out that even in the classical music tradition of the Europeans, things just basically deviated from homogeneous thinking and writing, as everybody writing the same thing too. After some time, people just started writing all sorts of different things. So it's difficult to classify that. For instance, in the middle of the 20th century, last century, in the 40s and the 50s, it's difficult to say this is the period. You can't say, this is the period. You can't name the period. You can only name the period by what do you call it? By the time that it is. By the time that, okay, this is 1945. Between 1900 to 1945. You couldn't give it a name anymore. Why? Because composers were not doing the same things anymore. And it kept on, spreading out like that, more and more and more as time went on. So my question is it still possible for us Africans, as time not caught up with us, is it still possible for us to sit down and have a unified set, ways and rules of doing? Is it possible to put it another way? Is it possible for us to write a constitution for our music?
Sorry, Mr. Wadi, I think it's very, very interesting. One, Nigeria has no identity in type of music. We are coming from different backgrounds. Yoruba from Gomasho is different from Ilefe. So there's no way you can standardize and you tell me that now, Cotonou, they have their music. Everybody know when you mention Cotonou, we know that's music from Cotonou. When you talk about Nigeria, there's no identity. We discussed it many times at Moson. Mr. Abakole is my witness here. So we discussed there's no identity for Nigerian music right now. Thank you.
According to Ogashiwanje, Ogashiwanje talked about having unified homogeneous music. It will be difficult to achieve that. It's possible, but it's very difficult because our so-called leaders in the music scholars, those who train us, they didn't really, they didn't show us love and a sense of unity. So the clashes here and there, we all know this story here and there, and it is we scholars and those that taught us. They have they have what position, more leverage, one position to establish the standard way of notating our own African music. Now, because of the culture,
bros, it's difficult for us to also have a standard music worldwide because the culture in Africa is not the same thing with them. We have our own scale, their scale, well temper scale, which they brought to us, now. So it's for us to have a unified standard. It may be difficult, but for us to have propose our own standard music, it's left to the elites, to help us bring out the rules and whatever. But the so-called elites, there's envy among us. Someone, the price is not really going. Someone, I'm serious. You have a common ground. You want to want unity, and so that those who coming behind us can see reason to walk in line, not mine. I thought then you can have a standard music. But let me have this end. The classical music is not really about people performing it. It has to do with things like I like your definition of music that obeys rule, beautiful. But in the Bible days, David had an orchestra, the Levites. They played classical music because you can't just join the Levite orchestra. They were trained. They're training them based on what were the things that not the training of something now. It's the way they train themselves on that, to come across what they call classical music. There's a culture they call music style they call Gagaku. Gagaku is a classical music in Japan. Now, it's not the same classical music that of Japan or whatever. They have their own, so they have an agreed method of resolving that this is standard. So for us to have that in Nigeria, sir, we need our guys to come together and come up with standard and
rather than standardization, because the present generation do not even know our music. I grew up from Delta State, Warri, John Rivers, man. I had to do lots of traveling to learn because of my love for music, to learn different cultures. And because we're an environment where we speak lots of language, different cultures, diverse cultures, we've got to preserve the music itself. The only place I've come to is in the West where you can see that, okay, yes, it's true, they are unified, they have, it's only in the West you get to see that at least there is a uniformity in the music. Not really necessarily because of the talking drums itself. You go to Delta States, there's the culture. You hear them based on the articulation of their words. You go to Igbo land, there's the way also. So what we're talking about is how to preserve what we have. Probably noticing what has been there, keeping it for the next generation. Thank you.
And my own area of specialization is composition and theory of music. The Ife man that just left, and he was complaining about musicologists in Nigerian universities. So every discipline in university has different areas of concentration. So there are those who are musicologists who write papers. There are those who are theoreticians who teach theory. There are those who are performance majors, BA organ, BA trumpet, BA and so on. So there are different areas of specialization. The musicology apparently seems to be what most lecturers in Nigeria now specialize in, and there's a reason for that. So a lot of issues have been raised. So to use the word Sean used, it's a big starter. So we will do whatever we can to teach them all together as much as we can today. Let me use the word Sean used. It's like informal. We're just discussing, trading ideas. They're just floating. What the higher institutions try to do is to formalize, to document. So somebody will be taking down notes, as we're saying. Whatever you are presenting, you write it down. So this can be kept so that people can refer to them in future. That's documentation. All right. This is just an informal session, but eventually we have to go along that line. So one conference cannot finish everything. Now there are a lot of issues. Somebody gave a definition of classical music some time ago. I think it's left. It's a classical music is one that has rules behind it that you have to follow. Well, that's just one definition. Now, if you look at the dictionary, you see that sometimes one word that's being defined has several different definitions. Definition 1, definition 2, and 3, and 4, and so on. So that's just one way of defining it. I can add one more. Classical music is serious music. All other music is entertainment music. That's basically what it is. That's basically how we see it from a higher standpoint. Classical music is the most serious expression of the individual who's trying to transmit a message, musical. All other music, pop, classical, folk, pop, jazz, folk, whatever you call it, are just meant to entertain people. You follow me? So, the issue of how this music developed in Europe is another big topic. But when we talk of documentation, what the point being raised here, that we have to find a way to standardize the use of music. Now, somebody has said music is a universal language. And once you have theories of music, and these were developed in Europe over a long period of time, it wasn't done in one day, right? The popular saying these days is that somebody is trying to reinvent the wheel. The laws of music are universal laws, just like laws of science and technology. So we can't say we're going to build a Nigerian car now, starting from scratch. No, the information is already there, but you can build up on what's on ground. So there's no reason to throw away the notation system. Where are you going to start? But you can move on from there, so to speak. Are you with me? Yes. All right, so what were the other issues that were raised? There are so many things to talk about that I don't even know, but like I said, we can't end it today. But there was a very curious thing that happened at Unilife some years back. We had a head of department after Professor Kwame retired. We had a head of department that was a Muslim, but there was an issue of Islam. Professor Adetoro, he was a visual artist. Our department is creative art, music, yes, creative arts. So at the staff meeting, the gentleman asked us, we're trying to talk of raising funds to buy equipment and so on and so forth, teaching materials. And then he asked, are there any Muslim students studying music? We said no. Are there any lecturers, music lecturers who are Muslim? We said no. He said, well, you see, music is a Christian subject. And I changed the topic. Well, we can excuse him for not having a wide understanding of the issues involved. It's very big, very big. Now, recently the government made a policy that everybody must have a PhD to teach in Nigerian because I know that was a person just called. Alright? And the criteria for promotion in the universities is based mostly on how many people you write there, all that criteria. So, a few years back at Unilife, we were trying to tell them that the creative arts, music, theater, and visual art can't be expected to have the same promotion criteria as people in law or science or other fields. Every field is different. And the VC said, okay, you guys write up something, tell us what's going on around the world globally, so we can compare. So we researched back around different programs around the world, and it was clear from all the examples that were cited that in the creative arts, the equivalent even of the PhD that the philosopher is just writing PhD. The masters, by the time you get your MMOS, Master of Music in organ playing or in piano playing or voice and all that, it's the amount of work involved is just the same, or if not more than what the PhD guy was just only writing. It doesn't do more than that. You can write your paper overnight, but to learn a piece of music, you can't do it overnight. You spend time. So these issues are still on ground at Nigerian universities. That means I think President Shagari some years ago said, I think the statistics he used for so many papers was out of the first 5,000 or so universities in the world ranking, Nigeria doesn't feature one. But there may be other statistics of people that people use. I think UI may be probably ranked somewhere in world statistics now. UI, some universities in Ghana. But in Africa, there are 3 or 4 universities that featured in the first 1,000 or so ranking in the world. Number 1, every year it's either Harvard in Boston or Oxford in London. They keep exchanging. So what do they do that we don't have that we reach out to them? So it's a developing country. So we still have a way to go. There are many things we have to develop. Every aspect of our life shows that we need to grow. So we haven't reached there.